Who are these people?
Yeah, this is called Talisman, Somewhere Miracles Belong. As far away as reason, and as long ago as peace, as distant as our memories of the lands we've made debris, before the shock had waned of seeing children laid to rest, or wailing on a martyred mother's chest, my talisman was woven from my faith in what I see, from my hope in other humans and the promises we keep. But as I sought the truth, it was so unbeknownst to me, more truths ensnare than set you free. As corruption follows prophets like a conduit of greed, in a covenant of bottom feeders scarfing down your seeds, they are tilling up the soil till the earth does all but bleed, till the greatest trees are hollowed, till their ashes fill the seas. Something 1% of us would kill to see. Or so it seems. Our leaders move to let them have their way, and they will call it by its oldest name, democracy. Some look on that horror and proclaim it truly free, but it truly feels like hell to me. It speaks to more the word of Moloch than the voice of the majority. So bite the hand that feeds like you've the sword and teeth of Orestes. Shun the beaten path lest you approach those horrors cordially. The myth of proper channels was another fascist forgery. They tangle you in loopholes till the knots become a tapestry. Bureaucracy's sarcophagus, red tape's woven masterpiece. On the former site, where now your palace sits, beneath your laws and fallacies, beneath your gods and chalices, there rests one tattered talisman, whose art was the miraculous, who brought a kiss of faith to those where hope was truly vacuous, and sought to light this vast abyss, where sacrament of callousness is lubricant for blood machines exsanguinating pacifists. And somewhere in the tatters are the olive leaves you trampled. Somewhere in the patterns are the roads you turned to landfills. Somewhere in the folds are nets that used to weave the waves and make a living for the living for whom we made open graves. Arrive with all this aid and find there's no one left to save. We starved them out or blew them all away. So you can mow down every marcher, but the march comes just the same. And so too do the million blooms of May. Be they frozen in the soil with the tatters of your faith, or blossomed in a one-armed child's brain. This world's most vital lessons are so brutal to explain, and its truths are not so easily contained. They are the talisman you bear when faith should feel as far away as the promise of one peaceful day. Like the fragment of a miracle you shield as if a flame, that one day it might keep the world at bay. When justice feels so distant, and hope is something strange, from as long ago as water, and as far away as rain, back before the death of reason, and the dulling down to gray of every violet pulse of passion in this screaming static state. Imagine all the people that we bulldozed wide awake. Imagine coming home, and all that's left is just the gate. Imagine there's no heaven, but you've got to keep the faith, or giving up the ghost when you're one wisp this side of wraith. Imagine there's no countries, so there is no land to claim. Would we make up lines and borders and assign them just the same? Would we go to war for little more than changing something's name? Would we let land be the reason for a genocide campaign? How could we ever trust ourselves when something's up for gain? How could we stand to watch ourselves when all the world's a stage? How could I ever laugh again and not feel something's wrong? Has my talisman been broken all along? Was the miracle the fact I ever turned my grief to song? Is this even somewhere miracles belong? And that's Talisman.
Who are these people?
So I don't know if you want to set up the story, Colin, about that. Did you ask him to do that, or did he just do that? Like,
No, asking Jesse.
yeah.
No,
Okay.
no, but I remember. I think you shared. No, I think you shared this in our group chat when you did it, and because you were talking about how I think your wife asked you to
I
get
remember
something,
that.
and then you were like, "No, I'm actually going to, write something." And you shared in our group chat, and I
Oh,
was,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it was
and
something to put in a
and
card because she needed something that was short enough to put in the cards for all the teachers at my son's school because she's
right,
on the she's the president of the school board.
right, and so yeah, I remember you shared that in our group chat, and I was just kind of floored,
Yeah, so it
I was
was
just like,
through your music, your language, your science and art, the time you put in, and the love in your heart, you make something more than the sum of its parts and impact more lives than could fit in one card.
Who are these people?
So this is a short story in the back of Yertle the Turtle called The Big Brag. Classic Seuss deep cuts going on here. Let me get a good angle where I can see this and you can see it. I wish this would let me make
The
myself
mobile
full
zoomed
screen
in.
on
Just
my
worry
own.
about the other side. But here, let me go back to just Jesse so you can see that. Take me away in the chat. There you go.
Here we go. The rabbit felt mighty important that day. On top of the hill, in the sun where he lay, he felt so important up there on that hill that he started in bragging, as animals will, and he boasted out loud as he threw out his chest, "Of all of the beasts in the world, I'm the best. On land and on sea, even up in the sky, no animal lives who is better than I." "What's that?" growled a voice that was terribly gruff. "Now why do you say such ridiculous stuff?" The rabbit looked down and he saw a big bear. "I'm the best of the beasts," said the bear, "and so there." I haven't, Ed. I've actually never read that one. "You are not," snapped the rabbit. "I'm better than you." "Pooh!" the bear snorted. "Again I say pooh. You talk mighty big, Mr. Rabbit, that's true, but how can you prove it? Just what can you do?" Thought the rabbit. "Now what can I do?" He thought and he thought. Then he finally said, "Mr. Bear, do you see these two ears on my head? My ears are so keen and so sharp and so fine, no ears in the world can hear further than mine." The bear grunted. He looked at each ear. "You say they are good," said the bear with a sneer, "but how do I know just how far they can hear?" "I'll prove," said the rabbit. "My ears are the best. You just sit there and watch me. I'll prove it by test." Then he stiffened his ears till they both stood up high, and he poised them straight up at the blue of the sky. He stretched his ears open as wide as he could. "Shh, I'm listening," he said as he stood. He listened so hard that he started to sweat, and the fur on his ears and his forehead got wet. For 7 long minutes he stood, then he stirred, and he said to the bear, "Do you know what I heard? Do you see that far mountain? It's 90 miles off. There's a fly on that mountain." I just heard him cough. Now, the cough of a fly, sir, is quite hard to hear when he's 90 miles off, but I heard it quite clear. So you see, bragged the rabbit, it's perfectly true that my ears are the best, so I'm better than you. The bear, for a moment, just sulked as he sat, for he knew that his ears couldn't hear things like that. This rabbit, he thought, made a fool out of me. Now I've got to prove that I'm better than he. So he said to the rabbit, you hear pretty well. You can hear 90 miles, but how far can you smell? I'm the greatest of smellers, he bragged. See my nose. This nose on my face is the finest that grows. My nose can smell anything, both far and near. With my nose, I can smell twice as far as you hear. You can't, snapped the rabbit. I can, growled the bear. And he stuck his big nose way up high in the air. He wiggled that nose, and he sniffed, and he snuffed. He waggled that nose, and he whiffed, and he wuffed. For more than 10 minutes, he snaffed and he snuffed. Then he said to the rabbit, I've smelled far enough. All right, said the rabbit. Come on now and tell. Exactly how far is the smell that you smell? Oh, I'm smelling a very far smell, said the bear. Away past that fly on the mountain out there. I'm smelling past many great mountains beyond, 600 miles more, to the edge of a pond. And way, way out there, by the pond you can't see, is a very small farm. On the farm is a tree. On the tree is a branch. On the branch is a nest, a very small nest where 2 tiny eggs rest. 2 hummingbird eggs, only half an inch long. But my nose, said the bear, is so wonderfully strong. My nose is so good that I smelled without fail that the egg on the left is a little bit stale. And that is a thing that no rabbit can do. So you see, the bear boasted, I'm better than you. My smeller's so keen that it just can't be beat. What's that? Called a voice from way down by his feet. The bear and the rabbit looked down at the sound, and they saw an old worm crawling out of the ground. Now, boys, said the worm, you've been bragging a lot. You both think you're great, but I think you are not. You're not half as good as a fellow like me. You hear and you smell, but how far can you see? Now I'm here to prove to you big boasting guys that your nose and your ears aren't as good as my eyes. And the little old worm cocked his head to one side, and he opened his eyes, and he opened them wide. And they looked far away with a strange sort of stare, as if they were burning 2 holes in the air. The eyes of that worm almost popped from his head. He stared half an hour till his eyelids got red. That's enough, growled the bear. Tell the rabbit and me, how far did you look? And just what did you see? Well, boys, the worm answered, that look that I took was a look that looked farther than you'll ever look. I looked across the ocean, way out to Japan, for I can see farther than anyone can. There's no one on earth who has eyesight that's finer. I looked past Japan, then I looked across China. I looked across Egypt, then I took a quick glance across the 2 countries of Holland and France. Then I looked across England and also Brazil, but I didn't stop there. I looked much farther still. And I kept right on looking and looking until I'd looked around the world and right back to this hill. And I saw on this hill, since my eyesight's so keen, the 2 biggest fools that have ever been seen. And the fools that I saw were none other than you, who seem to have nothing else better to do than to sit here and argue who's better than who. Then the little old worm gave his head a small jerk, and he dived in his hole, and he went back to work.
Don't be rude.
That's the big brag.
The whole time I was thinking Trump.
Don't be rude.
Don't be rude.
Who are these people?
And I remember this time to not have need to edit for language. We're going G-rated here, folks. So the Butter Battle book. On the last day of summer, 10 hours before fall, my grandfather took me out to the wall. For a while he stood silent. Then finally he said, with a very sad shake of his very old head, as you know, on this side of the wall, We are Ukes. On the far other side of the wall live the Zooks. Then my grandfather said, it's high time that you knew of the terribly horrible thing that Zooks do. In every Zook house and in every Zook town, every Zook eats his bread with the butter side down. But we Ukes, as you know, when we breakfast or sup, spread our bread, Grandpa said, with the butter side up. That's the right, honest way. Grandpa gritted his teeth, so you can't trust a Zook who spreads bread underneath. Every Zook must be watched. He has kinks in his soul. That's why, as a youth, I made watching my goal, watching Zooks for the Zook Watching Border Patrol. In those days, of course, the wall wasn't so high. You could look any Zook square. Let me get a better angle for you here. Hang on. I'm trying to face you front on.
I think we're actually pretty good, but we can't see the words. We can see the pictures.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, wow. And you sound a
In
lot
those
better.
days, of course, the wall wasn't so high, and I could look any Zook square in the eye. If he dared to come close, I could give him a twitch with my tough-tufted, prickly snickberry switch. For a while, that worked fine. All the Zooks stayed away, and our country was safe. Then one terrible day, a very rude Zook by the name of Van Itch snuck up and slingshotted my snickberry switch. With my broken off switch, with my head hung in shame, to the chief Ukaroo in great sorrow I came. But our leader just smiled. He said, you're not to blame, and those Zooks will be sorry they started this game. We'll dress you right up in a fancier suit, and we'll give you a fancier slingshot to boot. And he ordered the boys in the back room to figure how to build me some sort of a triple sling jigger. With the triple sling jigger, I felt much bigger. I marched to the wall with great vim and great vigor, right up to Vanitch with my hand on the trigger. I'll have no more nonsense, I said with a frown, from Zooks who eat bread with the butter side down. Vanitch looked quite sickly. He ran off quite quickly. I'm unhappy to say he came back the next day in a spiffy new suit with a big new machine, and he snarled as he said, looking frightfully mean, you may fling those hard rocks with your triple sling jigger, but I also now have my hand on a trigger. My wonderful weapon, the jigger rock snatch 'em, will fling 'em right back just as quick as you catch 'em. We'll have no more nonsense, we'll take no more gup from you Ukes who eat bread with the butter side up. I have failed, sir, I said, as I made my report to the chief Ukaroo in the headquarters fort. He just laughed. You've done nothing at all of the sort. Our slingshots have failed. That was old-fashioned stuff. Slingshots, dear boy, are not modern enough. All we need is some newfangled kind of a gun. My boys in the back room have already begun to think up a walloping whiz-zinger one. My bright boys are thinking they're on the right track. They'll think one up quick, and we'll send you right back. Well, they thought up a great one. They certainly did. They thought up a gun called the Kickapoo Kid, which they loaded with powerful Pooadoo powder and, God, I can hardly see, and ants' eggs and bees' legs and deep-fried clam chowder. And they carefully trained a real smart dog named Daniel to serve as our country's first gun-toting spaniel. Then Daniel, the Kickapoo Spaniel, and I marched back toward the wall with our heads held up high, while everyone cheered and their cheers filled the sky. Fight, fight for butter side up, do or die. Well, we didn't do, and we didn't quite die, but we sure did get worsted, poor Daniel and I. Van Itch was there too, and he said, the old pig, the boys in my back room invented this rig called the 8-nozzled elephant-toted boom blitz. It shoots high explosive sour cherry stone pits and will put your dumb kickapoo kid on the fritz. Poor Daniel and I were scared out of our wits. Once more, by Van Itch, I was bested and beat. Once again I limped home from the wall in defeat. I dragged and I sagged, and my spirits were low as I thought that they ever could go, when I heard a boom-ba and a diddle-de-dill, and our butter-up band marched up over the hill. The chief Euchrew had sent them to meet me, along with the right side up song girls to greet me. They sang, "Oh, be faithful, believe in thy butter," and they lifted my spirits right out of the gutter. "My boy," smiled the chief Euchrew, "we've just voted and made you a general. You've been promoted. Your pretty new uniform's ready. Get in it. The big war is coming. You're gonna win it. And what's more, this time you are certain... you're going to begin it. Sorry. And what's more, this time you are certain to win it. My boys in the back room have finally found how. Just wait till you see what they've puttered up now. In their great new machine, you'll fly over that wall and clobber those butter-down zooks, one and all." Those boys in the back room sure knew how to putter. They made me a thing called the utterly sputter, and I jumped aboard with my heart all aflutter and steered toward the land of the upside-down butter. This machine was so modern, so frightfully new, no one knew quite exactly just what it would do. Oh, but it had several faucets that sprinkled blue goo, which somehow would sprinkle the zooks as I flew and gum up the upside-down butter they chew. That's hidden in the bushes. I was racing pell-mell when I heard a voice yell, "If you sprinkle us zooks, you'll get sprinkled as well." Van Itch had a sputter exactly like mine, and he yelled, "My blue gooer is working just fine, and I'm here to say that if Ukes can goo zooks, you'd better forget it, 'cause zooks can goo Ukes." I flew right back home, and as you may have guessed, I was downright despondent, disturbed, and depressed. And I saw just as soon as I stepped back on land, so were all of the girls of the Butter-Up Band. The chief drum majorette, Ms. Yuki Ann Sue, said that was a pretty sour flight that you flew, and the chief Euchrew, he's been looking for you. Well, I raced to his office. The place was a sight. "Have no fear," said the chief. "Everything is all right. My bright backroom boys have been brighter than brighter. They've thought up a gadget that's newer than new, and it's filled with mysterious moo-lack-a-moo, and can blow all those zooks clear to Salamagoo. They've invented the Bitsy Big Boy Boomeroo. You just run to that wall like a nice little man, drop this bomb on the zooks just as fast as you can. I've ordered all ukes to stay safe underground while the Bitsy Big Boy Boomeroo is around." As I raced for that wall, with the bomb in my hand, I noticed that every last uke in our land was obeying our chief Euchrew's grim command. They were all bravely marching, with banners aflutter, down a hole for their country and right side up butter. That's when Grandfather found me. He grabbed me. He said, "You should be down that hole, and you're up here instead. But perhaps this is all for the better somehow. You will see me make history right here and right now." Grandpa leapt up that wall with a lopulous leap. And he cleared his hoarse throat with a bopulous beep, and he screamed, "Here's the end of that terrible town full of zooks who eat bread with the butter side down." And at that very moment, I'm sorry, it's so hard for me to see anything on the green text reading off of my own screen. It is bananas. And at that very instant, we heard a clop, clop of feet on the wall, and old Van Itch clopped up. The boys in his back room had made him one too. In his fist was another big boy boomeroo. I'll blow you, he yelled, into pork and wee beans. I'll butter side up you to small smithereens. Grandpa, I shouted, be careful. Oh, gee, who's gonna drop it? Will you or will he? Be patient, said Grandpa. We'll see. We will see. And that's the Butter Battle book by Dr. Seuss.
Who's
So as a
gonna
kid,
drop
I was
it?
like,
Who's gonna drop it?
excuse me? I was like, yeah, exactly. And same, my kid was like, wait.
Wait a minute. But can you go back to that last page? Because it's kind of funny. You know, there's a lot of course, you know, war stuff. And was that literally a red and a blue guy fighting on top of a wall?
Orange. To be fair,
Okay.
they have the other guy's orange, but
Okay.
I mean, his name is Van Itch, so they give it a kind of a, you know.
A Dutch, yeah. Well, the Dutch soccer team wears orange and black.
Who are these people?
Yeah, this is called The Art of Dying. There'll come a time when all of us must leave here. Then nothing Sister Mary can do will keep me here with you. There's nothing in this life that I've been trying could equal or surpass the art of dying. Do you believe me? There'll come a time when all your hopes are fading, when things that seem so very plain become an awful pain, searching for the truth among the lying, and answered when you've learned the art of dying. Are you still with me? But if you want it, then you must find it. But when you have it, there'll be no need for it. There'll come a time when most of us return here, brought back by our desire to be a perfect entity, living through a million years of crying, until you realize the art of dying. Do you believe me? Do you believe me? Do you believe me? And that's The Art of Dying by George Harrison.
Who are these people?
I really hope I can get this right. This is I don't even know if this might have been a B-side for them. This is a Duran song called The Chauffeur. Out on the top plains, the glides are moving, all looking for a new place to drive. You sit beside me, so newly charming. Sweating dewdrops glisten fresh at your side. As the sun drips down, batting heavy behind the front of your dress or shadowy line. The droning engine throbs in time with your beating heart. And the sun drips down, batting heavy behind the front of your dress or shadowy line. The droning engine throbs in time with your beating heart. Down the lane away, living for another day. The 8-foot storm up in the drifting haze. Sing seagull in the sky towards that hollow western isle. My envied lady holds you fast in her gaze. As the sun drips down, batting heavy behind the front of your dress, all shadowy line. The droning engine throbs in time with your beating heart. As the sun drips down, batting heavy behind the front of your dress, all shadowy line. The droning engine throbs in time with your beating heart. Bye, Tara. Thanks for coming. Sing, Drusilla. You sing, Drusilla. Just in case anybody ever needs some B-side Duran at a gig, keep that thing on me.
Who are these people?
From the top, the co-opt. If they can put a face to the movement, they can blacken both its eyes. If they can hold its hand when the photo's planned, they can frame it how they like. If they fashion us an idol, then the limelight floods our sight, and they can pose beside the movement with a cardboard picket line. In a crowd of paper labor dolls with copy-pasted signs on a safely guarded soundstage of Bezos's design. Where the fortunes of 500 CEOs have been divined, there now rise words that curse the movement's limbs for all of time. That for all its strength of labor, it will walk with withered step, and will wave a rusting saber as it heaves a labored breath, as it coughs through all the cancers born of Bezos's request, who'd prefer your starving neighbors locked in civil war for crumbs he left. But soon your cache of crumbs will mark your slums for violent theft. From those who act directly on behalf of those with insufficient limb to lift their hoarder's heft. Landlords order mortars sworn to render borders torsos cleft. Now tune that down a quarter step. Ego, soul, and organ death. Any month that ends in embers, rot through every crop has crept. Nothing fit to eat, at least there's lots of JP Morgan reps. I remember when we lived on empty promises through every winter. Now the grapes of wrath are plump, and they are harvested directly out of Martha's vineyard, where the soil's awfully rich and all the fertilizers even richer. My palette's not chromatically balanced. It's a cavalcade of crimson, and it paints a pulsing picture. It is gritty, it is ugly, it is viscerally stunning, and it ain't fit for consumption like the water in your cistern. Go and ring your congressman and tell that pig it's his turn. Poverty awaits, and there's a $7 wage for him to sit and watch his mansion full of shit burn. Although he won't be paid directly, he will soon receive an email that's supposed to have a link, but when it finally shows, it's empty. So he'll have to call support for confirmation that it's sent right, and then he'll get a shortcut to a poorly managed website where he'll submit a claim that must be notarized in person, all to finally be denied because he made too much the prior year to qualify for reimbursement. And now he knows the bitter taste of just a single day that all our retail workers face. He knows the kind of day our teachers have. The kind of day the janitors and lab technicians share with all the nursing staff. The kind of daily struggle that's a constant state of fear for all the working class. The white noise in their heads that's born of stress and turned to bursting glass. The constant thought the other shoe's about to drop, the size of half a city block that wouldn't stop for you. You're just a worm to smash. You're just another massacre they'll call a clash. You're just a frozen passenger before the crash. You're just another Afghan holding frozen cash, assets all immobilized by Joseph Biden, king of ice, the self-professed iconoclast, hosting dinner parties for his parasitic donors with some Donner party snacks. Nothing short of hearty, if you've heart enough, or lack thereof, to call it that. But who'd have thought the meaning of the average person's life was to work and sweat and die to keep the Blackstone Holdings wallet fat? Or even worse, that some are turned to chum to serve as power bars for bureaucrats, psychopomp and circumstance. Every time you sign your rights away, you'll earn rewards, and at 100,000 points, you can redeem them for your purpose back. And it's none the worse for wear, except a heavy coat of surface cracks. Courtesy of those who chose the path that dips its toes into the Jeffrey Epstein virgin bath. Courtesy of Congress and the Persian Gulf expansion pack. All our rations held for ransom, kept alive on honeyed words that slowed down all our actions till we're helpless when the ants attack. Stripped to little ribbons and then scattered to the winds like the million little secrets the oppressor's shadow hand redacts. The million lives it stamped out in Iraq until its hands were black. Machinations sacrosanct and cancerous and flavor-packed. We've got just the black site for your whistleblower's Baker Act. Somewhere in the weeds beyond the pines. Somewhere oddly Google somehow knows just where to find. It's right there in the file they've compiled all this time with the 7 trillion thoughts that ever came across your mind. And everything that ever turned you on or made you cry. Your truest, deepest fear and all the shame you sought to hide. The thoughts you dare not speak aloud lest they be weaponized have been loaded in the chamber and they're aimed between your eyes. Meanwhile, in your cell at home, they'll confiscate your blinds. They'll say you've waived your privacy. They'll show you where you signed. Now you don't control your thermostat. It's locked at 85. And you can't refuse the dermal graft that logs you into prime. You're just another wretch they'll come and fetch from out the vermin camp to mop some bloody floors and give a couple boots an oral shine. Oiled roots that move and writhe beneath a red-lined human tide, whose viscous sheen and toxic slime exist somewhere between a kind of Diet Coke and turpentine. The last of us are first in line. The curtain's up, we're streaming live, with censored scripts and sponsored rights, subject to changing overnight on Pepsi's whim, or Pfizer's spite, or Lockheed Martin's bomb supply, or any time we need to breed some fear to get the stocks to rise. For those who need some distance wedged between their public image and the list of those who visited the global child concubine. A client list that shall remain nameless. A client list at least a dozen pages of honey-potted politicians ripened for the knife twist. Once you're dead, it's safe to say you don't present a flight risk. Once your lips are sealed for good, there's zero chance you might slip and spill the beans about your recent string of overnight trips. Dropped from heights you can't achieve without a little nitrous. Down beneath the roots of truth, tenuous and fibrous. The currency of youth would seem a tier above the Midas. Christ, I gagged a little as I wrote the currency of youth. And I've yet to find the music that hath charm enough to soothe. My eyes are open wide, and I'm at terms with what I view, until I shut my eyes at night and see it too. Phantom limbs of reminiscence, twinging like a sickened witness, twisted in the spinal cringe, the traumatized revisit every minute, every statement picked to shreds before it's finished, all their dignity diminished, all their liberties relinquished, all your furnaces extinguished. All your means of warmth are flickering off into the distance. All the ways you know to make a living growing listless. All your savings spilled to fill a chalice meant for Pfizer, and they'll drink its vibrant ichor like they'll drown a round of blood from out the last Sumatran tiger. Light a nice cigar for every man they left to die awaiting trial up in Rikers. Do a line of blow for every drug offender turned to lifer. Do another line for every hybrid judge and agent of the instrumental prison profit system that they hired. They'll wear your movement like a mech they get to pilot, yelling hot labor summer through a microphone inside it. So all your eyes were elsewhere when the parties both collided and they formed a wave of fascism that somehow dwarfed their sum provided. A danger greater than its parts combined. A danger made the greater when the honest source is buried, but the narrative is wearing platinum labels saying trusted source that cover up its warning signs. If you'd have told me all of this at 40 Sunday mornings, I would like to think I'd meet it without disbelief, but really might have struggled just to reckon with it, grappled just to ratify, and watched a little bit to glimpse the bigot that we've gratified. I just hit 1,400 words, and kid, I'm barely satisfied. I've hardly started carving bars from off this chunk of malachite I found and claimed and vandalized. The rest is better left to settle one-on-one, just Gates and I. I'll desecrate his tesseract, I'll deconstruct his great design, and build upon the very spot on which it stood to touch the skies, a statue in his image, wrapped in tapestry of tannerite, so Bill would get to see himself immortalized, then blown to bits in record time. Blown to scraps of bronze that he can touch and hold and recognize. Face to face and frozen side by side, immobile Gemini. This must be that self-reflection people had suggested that instinctively had always felt to you like being patronized. Because if we talk, I'm talking down. If I speak, it's at my feet like you were 6 beneath the ground. I'll address you where you ought to be and not where you are now. My gaze won't meet your eyes, much less your crown. My praise is not to bathe in, it's to drown. I bet you didn't know that you could overload an ego to the point of blacking out. And that's what it's about. If you can kill a man with kindness, you can smother him with clout. Reverse his engineering at the hands of hungry crowds. He who bought up all the farmland and is casing now the clouds. Police will be the farm hands paid to put us out to pastures that are shades of gray and brown. And I can hear those bastards fast approaching. Screaming fills the town. An occupying army of abuser fascist clowns and some lachrymose millennials intent to vote them out. I laugh for those and pity those who vote with zero doubt, whose destinies as living ghosts they're all embracing bowed. The cops are inching closer and they snuff out every sound. And all I had to do was shut my mouth. I'll let you guess the tragic end result of Jesse Jett, who tried his best, but ultimately failed attempts to hold his tongue. Who couldn't find the will existing anywhere within him to begin to douse the fire rising up inside his lungs. Born of watching ignorant and educated shits press impressionable lips to boots that just inside a month or two will kick them from the bottom rung. Home is anywhere you lay your head once the oppressor's hung. Soon we'll cleanse our memories of the songs that the oppressors sung. And one by one, the words will turn to dirt that cannot hurt you, cannot infiltrate your movement, can't impress upon your sons, can't convince your daughters they've no power of their own, no agency beyond the task of keeping up a home. When the last of all the lobbyists is laid beneath the loam, there will be no profit sown in fields of bone. We will only reap the sleep and stolen wages that we're owed and commence the great unpaving of your quarter-mile driveways, terraforming tarmacs and industrial roads. Paranormal contracts dissipate to mist and disappear amidst the gloam. Disconnect the phone. Fist connects to stone. Somewhere in the thicket hums to life the buzz of crickets into one combining drone. But narrow down your vision, and you'll see that every cricket is in fact a tiny drone, coming to inform you that you must proceed directly to your designated zone, or you'll be tased until you're prone, till you're pissing blood and whispering to no one in particular, just all of the particulates that occupy the air. The only occupants you share this giant coffin with. At least you win the arguments, because they're too busy hogging all your oxygen to care. Hell, you're hardly cognizant. There's really nothing there. There's nothing close to conscious in your stare. Your eyes look like you're off in old Oahu, where you don't have any problems, where you haven't given thought to all the aquifers below you, full of fuel enough to launch you back to when you eyed Hawaii and Hawaiians told you not to. A little like the Mayans, humankind will leave a lot to deconstruct from what we kept behind to represent our legacy. Less the Stoic temples, less the gods resembled, less the carven lions standing watch above a vine-entangled mezzanine. More the arid soil, more the sea of oil, more the mark we leave behind is best exemplified by finding out Lake Mead is slightly caffeinated methamphetamine. Warped and shifted, torn and twisted, history revisited, the storm that buried Kennedy and swept the streets of Medellin stirs the strongest synchronized synthetic sleeper cell emotion center mound at Wrigley Field and harnesses the energy. We call that conditioning. They call it serenity. Those who crave obedience will swear they aren't your enemy, but live to see us orchestrated, moving like a centipede. Full consent, submissive cadence, terms accepted, didn't peak. Needs neglected, couldn't speak. Speech affected, only leaded fruit to eat, only fracking gruel to drink. But 2 for 1 on 40 weight at ExxonMobil Smoothie King. See, I tried to do the movie thing. I walked away and flicked the match, but I never heard the boom to match, just boomer waves of Schumerkrats. But humor's futile self-defense against such brutal facts, that some will never hear the words before they see the acts, who have never heard protect and serve and checked behind their backs, and who trust in politicians kept alive on purely Duracells and Duramax. A little dash of ritual, a jug of pharma cocktail, a little splash of Burning Man in nursing class. So let this be the call that stirs the hearts of all the emerging class, that churns through the recession's dirt to rise reborn in Wall Street's ash. We must shake off the pedagogues and Pentecost the plutocrats. And there is no salvation without doing that. Now, in the name of clarity, the Pentecost that I invoke is just the part with flaming tongues and not the hope of Holy Host. It's mostly for the imagery of all these bloated, greedy folks who break our backs and snake our taxes, treated like a weenie roast. And I'd take any bet that if we let our captors cook, you wouldn't see a bunch of struggling single parents show with worried looks like, someone help, we needed those. If we don't have the plutocrats, then who will raise the interest on our student loans? If we don't have the plutocrats, then who will cut the staff to pay for bonuses for CEOs of senior homes? Without our noble plutocrats, who would gut the budgets for anything providing education to the public? Who would neuter innovation that could benefit the nation because it wouldn't turn a profit, so it wasn't worth discussing? Without our precious plutocrats, then who'll ensure that poverty took hold of our enlightenment and never let us see the sun or ever smell that rain was coming? No one's gonna stop. And if they did, they'd say the warmth is nice, or God, the flames are stunning. Because who would miss or pity all those monuments to nothing? Those who've witnessed cities turn to husks, the wealthy drained with but a touch, to pave the way for a development that's easy money, that never seems to trickle down to someone hungry or anyone beyond their inner circle jerk of golfing buddies. And I'm not here for slinging mud. It's what you do. It's what you love. You're fucking pigs. I do not give a shit if you're a little muddy. I need to see you destitute and see you struggling. Desperate just to feed yourselves a scrap of something. Desperate to the point you take a bite of crow and know a taste that's truly humbling. We only can begin to tear the old foundation down once we confess that, yes, it's crumbling. And we all know it's crumbling. We can see collapse as plain as day on every corner, 'neath a veil of thin decorum, like a blueprint overlaid made by the Economic Forum. The plans they've drawn and quartered, the graves they're counting early, and the million more back-ordered. I would rather take a stand than live and die by their accordance. I would rather see the forest once than corpses formed of brick and mortar. And if the band you're in starts playing censored tunes, then I'll see you on the dark side of the border. And that's the co-opt.
Take a drink. Take a drink.
Oh, God. Whew.
Who are these people?
SWAT team took your neighbor today. Watched them as they walked him away. You told yourself extremists come in all different shapes. Met his eyes and lowered your gaze. Is it too late for us to ever change? When we are collecting the dust of better days, they're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to be safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Sheriff stopped your daughter today. Pepper sprayed her twice in the face. He must have had good reason if he'd treat her that way. At least that's what they've taught you to say. But is it too late for us to ever change? Once we're collecting the dust of better days, they're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to feel safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Feds arrived and had you detained. Said you'd made some posts they want changed. Tased you till you felt like you'd forgotten your name, or life before they had you contained. Life before they had you contained. SWAT team took your neighbor today.
Who are these people?
Let's do a little spoken word. Let's jump to and then the sky slam shut.
Nice.
We got to get serious for a minute. Honestly, it feels weird to even do a normal show with everything that's going on.
Yeah.
But I did both of my my Palestine pieces in the last couple episodes. I don't want to just sit here and keep doing those over and over. But then the more I look around, then I see plenty of pieces that say it without saying it. Sadly, any of my stuff that was in reference to Ukraine fits right in when you're talking about propagandizing people and getting them on board for the latest thing, you know. And this felt like
the
a good
current
one.
thing.
The Eyes of the Sun on and then the sky slammed shut.
I'm there. Okay, doke.
This was one of those, you know, it's easy sometimes to just let it go with some people and know you're not going to get through to them. You can lead them to water, but they'll never drink. But when it's someone you really care about, it's harder to let that go. And this, unfortunately, this piece is super applicable to Israel Palestine as well. But yeah, this piece came out of that. This is just a piece about family and propaganda. This is called The Eyes of the Sun. It isn't rare for me to witness one of propaganda's victims spitting back the facts they're given. And I've learned it's better not to listen, lest I find myself compelled to try and help them grasp the greater picture. I walk away contented not to bother, but that's harder when the victim is your father. When it's a man who saw beyond the feeble reasons we were offered to go and occupy Iraq till after 20 years of slaughter, the democracy we came to spread does not extend a centimeter farther than the army bases stocked with our marauders. This isn't foreign land, but Dad, I beg you, please don't drink the water. Please don't view the news as something other than a transcript of the sheriff's office blotter. There aren't any officers worth half their salt. I can't recall a decent cop. The brush with which I paint is something broader. The brush with which I paint conveys the shade of beaten daughters, of officers who traffic children shielded by the guise of honor, shielded by a culture that uplifts them to such high regard it overlooks the powder mark that always was their calling card. Now we're told to fall apart at Biden's feet and make a plea that he can find it somewhere in his hollow heart to call off all his oligarchs and LEOs in army garb with army tanks and lethal arms and carve a path to peace between these monumental prison bars. It isn't hard to listen to the rabble spout the script. They memorized it from the instant it departed Clinton's lips. But once you're standing stunned and hearing State Department clips from a voice that taught you right from wrong, you're loath to come to grips. You'll start slowing to a crawl until you're low enough to limp. You'll be pulled between just holding back or giving Dad a glimpse of every hospital they bombed or each civilian that they hit and posed to take a couple pictures and say, look what Russia did. We're cooking all the history books from now until Berlin, but we're not the fucking heroes here. We're Nazis counting limbs. We lied about Gaddafi and Saddam and Ho Chi Minh. We're the Fourth Reich, shining little city on a hill of sins. We got a taste for war and ain't been civil since. We will show up at your doors and you will let us in. We will colonize your pores, commodify your skin, and you'll consent to this and more if you're not vigilant, or Jesus, even outright militant. How many citizens could hope to glimpse the light again if they signed on the dotted line to sacrifice the wiring out their filament? And mind you, winter's imminent. What could you expect from those you've trained to know they're only worth donations they can make to those a half a world away who daily ride in NATO's throes on top of years of Nazi occupation? We're so used to being bled, so what's another leech or 10? 'Cause once your blood is not your own, it matters not the destination. Be it on the altar stone of Capitol or in the river. Be it in the streets because the police saw you were moments from committing free speech and so justice was delivered. Or be it in a glass for Bill Clinton so he lives to see another winter. This is cattle syndrome if you need a raw descriptor. It's passive pasture victims slurping CIA scriptures out the cistern. They only change the water every midterm. Democratic progress via inchworm, tethered to a trig while Harris breaks it down to kid terms. Watch me lock a full body cringe like a pinched nerve, and watch me try to stop the clip fist first. Watch me spend a half an hour staring out the window till the first verse, fifth verse, and all that's in the middle hits my fingers with a ripple on the Richter. Who block out all the bombs along with native whispers. That drift along the wind with familiar whistle, or plummet from the sky like hellfire missiles. The sun observes it all, the leaves that fall on thistle, the truth that's underneath the skin betwixt the gristle, the truth that leaves your lips and brings your swift dismissal. The sun withholds his speech. It seems the only words he knows are those that sow division. The sun can see the truth as from the windows of a prison. The sun can see the dawn before it's even risen. The sun can see it all, though he may wish he didn't. And that's the eyes of the sun.
Who are these people?
Here we go, fam. The Festival by H.P. Lovecraft. I was far from home, and the spell of the eastern sea was upon me. In the twilight I heard it pounding on the rocks, and I knew it lay just over the hill where the twisting willows writhed against the clearing sky and the first stars of evening. And because my fathers had called me to the old town beyond, I pushed on through the shallow, new-fallen snow along the road that soared lonely up to where Aldebaran twinkled among the trees, on toward the very ancient town I had never seen, but often dreamed of. It was the Yuletide, which men call Christmas, though they know in their hearts it is older than Bethlehem and Babylon, older than Memphis and mankind. Stro, are you serious? Oh my God. It was the Yuletide, and I had come at last to the ancient sea town where my people had dwelt and kept festival in the elder time when festival was forbidden, where also they had commanded their sons to keep festival once every century, that the memory of primal secrets might not be forgotten. Mine were an old people, old even when this land was settled 300 years before, and they were strange because they had come as, good God Almighty, are you serious?
Hey,
Oh, that's my cat, folks.
technical difficulties,
You know what?
folks.
Just-
All righty, Jesse
Hang
is
on.
getting himself.
You're not
set
gonna
up.
hide now. No, look at what you've done.
Oh, see,
Look
wait,
at me.
hold on.
Look at me.
I gotta put you
Look at
back
me.
on, Jesse.
Huh?
Castro. Now we go to pet videos. Now this thing's
Yeah.
gonna blow up
Dun,
on
dun, dun, dun.
Rumble.
Dun 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 dun.
Cat takes over American tradition. Dun, 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 dun. Oh my god. Dude.
Hey, hang on. That's for subscribers only. You can't show them the good
Dude,
bits.
come on. That's the OnlyFans. That's for OnlyFans.
Oh, good God.
What is happening here?
He's gonna
Castro.
keep doing it. That's the worst
Dude,
part.
he's just gonna use that tail to whack on the microphone too.
He's
Pap,
behind the
Pap,
problem.
pap.
So this webcam,
Kitty
cord-
butthole cam.
cord
Wow.
is super sensitive.
Oh my god, this is great.
As soon as you push on that cord, the camera just goes
shit.
whomp, whomp.
Oh,
Okay.
that is.
Are you done?
That is.
He's
Cat-
snugging all
cats.
over the back of it.
That's our
we're
dicks.
so fucked.
And kitty butthole
We're
cam.
fucked.
Wow. Yes.
Can you hit me with a? Can you
Oh
hit me with a
yeah.
Misty?
Hold on. I need a soundboard here.
We're fucked.
I don't think you got that, but they did.
Okay, good. That's all that matters. Are you done? Huh?
Here, I'll make sure you get it too.
We're fucked.
There you
Thank
go.
you. Oh, brisket. Okay, are you done? Settle your shit. Goodness gracious, he's so unprofessional. I'm so sorry.
I enjoy it.
Well, that's all that matters, right? As long as Nancy's happy. To quote AOC, as long as Nancy's
Mama
happy.
Bear's very happy. Joe Biden's going to be the nominee, and there's not going to be a primary, and everybody's running around and tearing their
Right?
hair out, and that's just how they like it, because that's when they start doing some crazy shit. So keep an eye on what they're up to right now while everybody else is going crazy. Just saying, folks.
Okay. He's laying on the couch. I think we might be okay. Oh man, if the webcam wasn't positioned, I would bring it over because he's being pretty damn adorable. You know what? By God, this is my show. Look at, hang on. No, don't hide now. Look at this cute little bastard. Mister, what are you doing?
Meow. He's messing with your chair. He's looking for love.
He's got one paw on my back. Yep. About to
Oh.
get some big belly.
Oh, like what are you doing, dude? I'm showing you the goods. You know you can't resist. Let's go.
That's half of the couch down here. That's how big this cat is.
Damn. That is a large kitty.
Yeah. Stretch. There we go.
Yeah, and Anthony is Comrade Kitty, so you know he's loving that. Yep. Smiling cat, hard eyes. Yep. No debate about it.
Oh, okay. That paw got deep. All right, let's settle down. Oh man, that one really hooked into the. Oh, okay, and got it into my meat. Stop it, fucker. He is a floof barge. It's very true.
Wow. Kitty
it's like I'm getting acupuncture, just like right at my kidneys. So
Kitty's
brutal.
taking over the show. He's like, "Fuck this, man. This is Kitty tradition now."
Fuck it, we're doing it live. We'll put
It's
it up.
Castro. It's Castro's tradition.
Oh,
Communism. You know what? That's Fiorella.
I'd say YouTube would love that.
Yep. That's Fiorella, like speaking from Russia or wherever she is these days. Hi, Fee.
Okay. Where were we? It was the Yuletide. Okay. Mine were an old people, old even when this land was settled 300 years before. And they were strange because they had come as dark, furtive folk from opiate southern gardens of orchids, and they had spoken another tongue before they learnt the tongue of the blue-eyed fishers. And now they were scattered, and shared only the rituals of mysteries that none living could understand. I was the only one who came back that night to the old fishing town as legend bade, for only the poor and the lonely remember. Then, beyond the hill's crest, I saw Kingsport outspread frostily in the gloaming. Snowy Kingsport, with its ancient vanes and steeples, ridgepoles and chimney pots, wharves and small bridges, the willow trees and graveyards, endless labyrinths of steep, narrow, crooked streets, and the dizzy church-crowned central peak that time does not touch. Ceaseless mazes of colonial houses piled and scattered at all angles and levels like a child's disordered blocks. Antiquity hovering on gray wings over winter-whitened gables and gambrel roofs. And against the rotting wharves, the sea pounded, the secretive, immemorial sea out of which the people had come in the elder time. Beside the road at its crest, a still higher summit rose, bleak and windswept, and I saw that it was the burying ground, where black gravestones stuck ghoulishly through the snow like the decayed fingernails of a gigantic corpse. The printless road was very lonely, and I sometimes thought I heard the distant creaking as of a gibbet in the wind. They had hanged 4 kinsmen of mine for witchcraft in 1692, but I did not know just where. As the road wound down the seaward slope, I listened for the merry sounds of the village at evening, but I did not hear them. And then I thought of the season, and I felt that these old Puritan folk might well have Christmas customs that were strange to me, and full of silent hearthside prayer. So after that I did not listen for merriment, or look for wayfarers, but I kept on down past the hushed, lighted farmhouses and the shadowy stone walls, to where the signs of ancient shops and sea taverns creaked in the salt breeze, and the grotesque knockers of pillared doorways glistened along deserted, unpaved lanes in the light of little curtained windows. I had seen maps of the town, and I knew where to find the home of my people. It was told that I should be known and welcomed, for the village legend lives long. So I hastened through Back Street to Circle Court, and across the fresh snow on the one full flagstone pavement in the town. I was glad I had chosen to walk. The white village had seemed very beautiful from the hill, and now I was eager to knock at the door of my people. The 7th house on the left in Green Lane, with an ancient peaked roof and a jutting second story, all built before 1650. There were lights inside the house when I came upon it, and I saw from the diamond window panes that it must have been kept very close to its antique state. The upper part overhung the narrow grass-grown street and nearly met the overhanging part of the house opposite, so that I was almost in a tunnel, with the low stone doorstep wholly free from snow. There was no sidewalk, but many houses had high doors reached by double flights of steps with iron railings. It was an odd scene, and because I was strange to New England, I had never known its like before. Though it pleased me, I would have relished it better if there had been footprints in the snow, and people in the streets, and a few windows without drawn curtains. When I sounded the archaic iron knocker, I was half afraid. Some fear had been gathering in me, perhaps because of the strangeness of my heritage, and the bleakness of the evening, and the queerness of the silence in that aged town of curious customs. When my knock was answered, I was fully afraid because I had not heard any footstep before the door creaked open. But I was not afraid long, for the gowned, slippered old man in the doorway had a bland face that reassured me, and though he made signs that he was dumb, he wrote a quaint and ancient welcome with the stylus and wax tablet that he carried. He beckoned me into a low, candle-lit room with massive exposed rafters and dark, stiff, sparse furniture of the 17th century. The past was vivid there, for not an attribute was missing. There was a cavernous fireplace and a spinning wheel, at which a bent old woman in loose wrapper and deep poke bonnet sat back toward me, silently spinning despite the festive season. An infinite dampness seemed upon the place, and I marveled that no fire should be blazing. The high-backed settle faced the row of curtained windows at the left, and seemed to be occupied, though I was not sure. I did not like everything about what I saw, and felt again the fear that I had had. This fear grew stronger from what had before lessened it, for the more I looked at the old man's bland face, the more its very blandness terrified me. The eyes never moved, and the skin was too like wax. Finally, I was sure it was not a face at all, but a fiendishly cunning mask. But the flabby hands, curiously gloved, wrote genially on the tablet, and told me I must wait a while before I could be led to the place of festival. Pointing to a chair, a table, and a pile of books, the old man now left the room. And when I sat down to read, I saw that the books were hoary and moldy, and that they included old Morrister's wild marvels of science, the terrible Sodicmus Triumphatus of Joseph Glanville, published in 1681, the shocking Demonolatria of Remigius, reprinted in 1595 at Lyons, and worst of all, the unmentionable Necronomicon of the Arab Abdul al-Hazred, in Olaus Wormius's forbidden Latin translation, a book which I had never seen, but of which I had heard monstrous things whispered. No one spoke to me, but I could hear the creaking of signs in the wind outside, and the whir of the wheel as the bonneted old woman continued her silent spinning and spinning. I thought the room and the books and the people all very morbid and disquieting, but because an old tradition of my father's had summoned me to strange feastings, I resolved to expect strange things. And so I tried to read, and soon became tremblingly absorbed by something I found in that accursed Necronomicon. A thought and a legend too hideous for sanity or consciousness, but I disliked it when I fancied that I heard the closing of one of the windows that the settle faced, as if it had been stealthily opened. It had seemed to follow a whirring that was not of the old woman's spinning wheel. This was not much, though, for the old woman was spinning very hard, and the aged clock had been striking. After that, I lost the feeling that there were persons on the settle, and I was reading intently and shudderingly when the old man came back, booted and dressed in a loose antique costume, and he sat down on that very bench so that I could not see him. It was certainly nervous waiting, and that blasphemous book in my hands made it doubly so. When 11 o'clock struck, however, the old man stood up, glided to a massive carved chest in a corner, and got 2 hooded cloaks, one of which he donned, the other of which he draped round the old woman, who was ceasing her monotonous spinning. Then they both started for the outer door, the woman lamely creeping, and the old man, after picking up the very book I had been reading, beckoning me as he drew his hood over that unmoving face or mask. We went out into the moonless and tortuous network of that incredibly ancient town, went out as the lights in the curtained windows disappeared one by one, and the dog star leered at the throng of cowled, cloaked figures that poured silently from every doorway and formed monstrous processions up this street and that, past the creaking signs and the antediluvian gables, the thatched roofs and the diamond-paned windows, threading the precipitous lanes where those decaying houses overlapped and crumbled together, gliding across open courts and churchyards, where the bobbing lanterns made eldritch, drunken constellations. Among these hushed throngs I followed my voiceless guides, jostled by elbows that seemed preternaturally soft, and pressed by chests and stomachs that seemed abnormally pulpy, but never seeing a face, and hearing never a word. Up, up, up the eerie columns slithered, and I saw that all the travelers were converging as they flowed near a sort of focus of crazy alleys at the top of a high hill in the center of town, where perched a great white church. I had seen it from the road's crest when I looked at Kingsport in the new dusk, and it had made me shiver, because Aldebaran had seemed to balance itself a moment on the ghostly spire. There was an open space around the church, partly a churchyard with spectral shafts, and partly a half-paved square, swept nearly bare of snow by the wind, and lined with unwholesomely archaic houses. Death fires danced over the tombs, revealing gruesome vistas, though failing to cast any shadows. Past the churchyard, where there were no houses, I could see over the hill's summit and watch the glimmer of stars on the harbor, though the town was invisible in the dark. Only once in a while a lantern bobbed horribly through the serpentine alleys on its way to overtake the throng that was now slipping speechlessly into the church. I waited until the crowd had oozed into the black doorway, until all the stragglers had followed. The old man was pulling at my sleeve, but I was determined to be the last. Then finally I went, the sinister man and the old spinning woman before me. Crossing the threshold into that swarming temple of unknown darkness, I turned once to look at the outside world, as the churchyard phosphorescence cast a sickly glow on the hilltop pavement. And as I did so, I shuddered, for though the wind had not left much snow, a few patches did remain on the path near the door, and in that fleeting backward look, it seemed to my troubled eye that they bore no mark of passing feet, not even mine. The church was scarce lighted by all the lanterns that had entered it, for most of the throng had already vanished. They had streamed up the aisle between the high white pews to the trapdoor of the vaults, which yawned loathsomely open just before the pulpit, and they were now squirming noiselessly in. I followed dumbly down the foot-worn steps and into the dank, suffocating crypt. The tale of that sinuous line of night marchers seemed very horrible, and as I saw them wriggling into a venerable tomb, they seemed more horrible still. Then I noticed that the tomb's floor had an aperture down which the throng was sliding, and in a moment we were all descending an ominous staircase of rough-hewn stone. A narrow, spiral staircase, damp and peculiarly odorous, that wound endlessly down into the bowels of the hill, past monotonous walls of dripping stone block and crumbling mortar. It was a silent, shocking descent, and I observed after a horrible interval that the walls and steps were changing in nature as if chiseled out of the solid rock. What mainly troubled me was that the myriad footfalls made no sound and set up no echoes. After more eons of descent, I saw some side passages or burrows leading from unknown recesses of blackness to this shaft of nighted mystery. Soon they became excessively numerous, like impious catacombs of nameless menace, and their pungent odor of decay grew unbearable. I knew we must have passed down through the mountain and beneath the earth of Kingsport itself, and I shivered that a town should be so aged and maggoty with subterraneous evil. Then I saw the lurid shimmering of a pale light, and I heard the insidious lapping of sunless waters. Again I shivered, for I did not like the things that the night had brought, and I wished bitterly that no forefather had summoned me to this primal rite. As the steps and the passage grew broader, I heard another sound, the thin, whining mockery of a feeble flute, and suddenly there spread out before me the boundless vista of an inner world, a vast fungus shore litten by a belching column of sick greenish flame, and washed by a wide oily river that flowed from abysses frightful and unsuspected to join the blackest gulfs of immemorial ocean. Fainting and gasping, I looked at that unhallowed Erebus of Titan toadstools, leprous fire, and the slimy water, and I saw the cloaked throngs forming a semicircle around the blazing pillar. It was the Yule rite, older than man and fated to survive him, the primal rite of the solstice, and of spring's promise beyond the snows, the rite of fire and evergreen, of light and music. And in that Stygian grotto I saw them do the rite, and adore the sick pillar of flame, and throw into the water handfuls gouged out of the viscous vegetation which glittered green in the chlorotic glare. I saw this, and I saw something amorphously squatted far away from the light, piping noisomely on a flute. And as the thing piped, I thought I heard noxious muffled flutterings in that fetid darkness where I could not see. But what frightened me most was that flaming column, spouting volcanically from depths profound and inconceivable, casting no shadows as healthy flame should, and coating the nitrous stone above with a nasty venomous verdigris, for in all that seething combustion no warmth lay, but only the clamminess of death and corruption. The man who had brought me now squirmed to a point directly beside the hideous flame, and made stiff, ceremonial motions to that semicircle he faced. At certain stages of the ritual they did groveling obeisance, especially when he held above his head that abhorrent Necronomicon he had taken with him, and I shared all the obeisances because I had been summoned to this festival by the writings of my forefathers. Then the old man made a signal to that half-seen flute player in the darkness, which player thereupon changed its feeble drone to a scarce louder drone in another key, precipitating as it did so a horror unthinkable and unexpected. At this horror I sank nearly to the lichened earth, transfixed with a dread, not of this nor any world, but only of those mad spaces between the stars. Out of the unimaginable blackness, beyond the gangrenous glare of that cold flame, out of the Tartarian leagues through which that oily river rolled, uncanny, unheard, and unsuspected, there flopped rhythmically a horde of tame, trained, hybrid, winged things that no sound eye could ever wholly grasp or sound brain ever wholly remember. They were not altogether crows, nor moles, nor buzzards, nor ants, nor bats, nor decomposed human beings, but something I cannot and must not recall. They flopped limply along, half with webbed feet and half with their membranous wings, and as they reached the throng of celebrants, the cowled figures seized and mounted them and rode off one by one along the reaches of that unlighted river into pits and galleries of panic where poison springs feed frightful and undiscoverable cataracts. The old spinning woman had gone with the throng, and the old man remained only because I had refused when he motioned me to seize an animal and ride like the rest. I saw when I staggered to my feet that the amorphous flute player had rolled out of sight, but that two of the beasts were patiently standing by. As I hung back, the old man produced his stylus and tablet and wrote that he was the true deputy of my fathers, who had founded the Yule worship in this ancient place, that it had been decreed that I should come back, and that the most secret mysteries were yet to be performed. He wrote this in a very ancient hand, and when I still hesitated, he pulled from his loose robe a seal ring and a watch, both with my family arms, to prove that he was what he said. But it was a hideous proof, because I knew from the old papers that watch had been buried with my great-great-great-great-grandfather in 1698. Presently, the old man drew back his hood and pointed to the family resemblance in his face, but I only shuddered because I was sure that the face was merely a devilish waxen mask. The flopping animals were now scratching restlessly at the lichens, and I saw that the old man was nearly as restless himself. When one of the things began to waddle and edge away, he turned quickly to stop it, so that the suddenness of his motion dislodged the waxen mask from what should have been his head. And then, because that nightmare's position barred me from the stone staircase down which we had come, I flung myself into the oily, underground river that bubbled somewhere to the caves of the sea. I flung myself into that putrescent juice of earth's inner horrors before the madness of my screams could bring down upon me all the carnal legion those pest gulfs might conceal. At the hospital, they told me that I had been found half frozen in Kingsport Harbor at dawn, clinging to the drifting spar that accident sent to save me. They told me I had taken the wrong fork of the hill road the night before and fallen over the cliffs at Orange Point, a thing they deducted from prints found in the snow. There was nothing I could say, because everything was wrong. Everything was wrong, with the broad window showing a sea of roofs in which only about 1 in 5 was ancient, and the sound of trolleys and motors in the streets below. They insisted that this was Kingsport, and I could not deny it. When I went delirious at hearing that the hospital stood near the old churchyard on Central Hill, they sent me to St. Mary's Hospital in Arkham, where I could have better care. I liked it there, for the doctors were broad-minded, and even lent me their influence in obtaining the carefully sheltered copy of Alhazared's objectionable Necronomicon from the library of Miskatonic University. They said something about a psychosis, and agreed that I had better get my harassing obsessions off my mind. And so I read again that hideous chapter, and I shuddered doubly because it was indeed not new to me. I had seen it before, let footprints tell what they might, and where it was I had seen it were best forgotten. There was no one in waking hours who could remind me of it, but my dreams are filled with terror because of phrases I dare not quote. I dare quote only one paragraph, put into such English as I can make from the awkward low Latin. "The nethermost caverns," he wrote, "are not for the fathoming of eyes that see, for their marvels are strange and terrific. Cursed the ground where dead thoughts live new and oddly bodied, and evil the mind that is held by no head. Wisely did Ibn Shakabak say that happy is the tomb where no wizard hath lain, and happy the town at night whose wizards are all in ashes. For it is of the old rumor that the soul of the devil-bought hastes not from his carnal clay, but fats and instructs the very worm that gnaws, till out of corruption horrid life springs, and the dull scavengers of earth wax crafty to vex it, and swell monstrous to plague it. Great holes secretly are digged where earth's pores ought to suffice, and things have learnt to walk that ought to crawl." And that's the festival, folks.
Who are these people?
Geiger Age.
I'm a child of the Geiger Age. I'm not the only one. My mama raised me on for stories about the sun, 'cause it was gone. Far as she could tell, it was gone. Locked out by the smog, and if the smog ain't moving on, that sun is gone. My eyes have seen the glory of industrial disease. My mama raised me telling tales about the trees, 'cause they were gone. But my mama knew the trees were gone. They roasted inside out and ain't no soul fit to describe. Those trees are gone. she had an optimistic streak, or maybe she was scared. But bless her soul, my mama said the ocean would be spared, and now it's gone. By the time I reached the shore, it all was gone. I'm glad she didn't live to see the day that she was wrong. But when I reached the ocean, it was gone, gone, gone.
That's the Geiger Age.
Who are these people?
Let's drop her down one. All right. Yeah, this is called All Used Up.
I spent my whole life making somebody rich. I busted my ass for that son of a bitch, and he left me to die like a dog in a ditch. Told me I'm all used up. He used up my labor, used up my time, plundered my body and squandered my mind, and gave me a pension, a handouts and wine. Told me I'm all used up. Now my kids are in hock to a god you call work, slaving their lives out for some other jerk. And my youngest in Frisco just made shipping clerk. He don't know I'm all used up. They use up the oil, use up the trees, use up the air, and they use up the seas. But how about you, friend, and how about me? What's left when we're all used up? Some young people reach out for power and gold, don't have respect for anything old, for pennies they're bought and for promises sold. Someday they'll all be used up. Well, I'll finish my life in this crummy hotel. It's lousy with bugs and my God, what a smell. But my plumbing still works and I'm clear as a bell. Don't tell me I'm all used up. Sometimes in a dream, I sit by a tree. My life is a book of how things used to be. And the kids gather round and they listen to me. They don't think I'm all used up. There's songs and there's laughter, things I can do. And all that I've learned I can give back to you. And I'd give my last breath just to make it come true. And to know I'm not all used up. They use up the oil, use up the trees, use up the air, and they use up the seas. But how about you, friend, and how about me? What's left when we're all used up?
Oh, that's beautiful. It sounds like, is that like an Irish folk song? It sounds like an old Irish folk song.
No, I just capoed the hell of it. It's usually a lot lower. It's usually like, I gave my whole life making somebody rich. Busted my ass for that son of a bitch. It's a little straightforward. Utah Phillips.
Okay,
Is,
I kind of do know, like in the Avengers, not the Avengers.
He was labor organizer. So his shit was like lyrics first. There was a really great story he used to tell that as he was getting older, his wife encouraged him to go out and keep performing, but he was self-conscious because his guitar ability was getting shitty. And she was like, no one ever came to hear you play guitar. You know, that's not what your music's about. And so he went out and kept going.
Right. Damn, man. Like
all right,
that
so
one?
let's get into some Springsteen.
Woo, let's do that.
This song, I think it's fair to say more people probably know Rage Against the Machine's version than Bruce Springsteen's anymore, or at least it certainly gets more airplay. But I always loved this song. This is Ghost of Tom Joad. Man walk along the railroad tracks, going someplace and there's no going back. Highway patrol chopper coming up over the ridge. Hot soup on a campfire under the bridge. The shelter line stretching around the corner. Welcome to the New World Order. Families sleep in their cars out in the Southwest. No job, no home, no peace, no rest. Well, the highway is alive tonight. Nobody's kidding nobody about where it goes. Sitting down here in the campfire light, searching for the ghost of old Tom Joad. He pulls a prayer book out of his sleeping bag. Preacher lights up a button, he takes a drag. The last will be first, and first will be last. Cardboard box beneath the underpass. You got a one-way ticket to the promised land. You got a hole in your belly and a gun in your hand. Sleeping on a pillow of solid rock. Bathing in the city aqueduct. Well, the highway's alive tonight. Nobody fool nobody about where it goes. And I'm sitting down here in the campfire light, waiting on the ghost of old Tom Joad. Tom said, Ma, wherever there's a cop beating a guy, wherever a hungry newborn baby cries, where there's a fight against blood and hatred in the air, look for me, Mom, I'll be there. There's somebody fighting for a place to stand, a decent job or a helping hand, wherever somebody's struggling to be free. Look in their eyes, Mom, you'll see me. Well, the highway's alive tonight. Nobody kidding nobody about where it goes. I'm sitting down here in the campfire light, waiting on the ghost of Tom Joad.
Who are these people?
This is Great Experiment. Read my lips. Brand new taxes, starving all the billionaires and neutering their Visa Maxes. The topple Congress off their axis, mobilize the homeless, give them access, call it praxis, chop a couple limbs off the legislative branches. We'll show you the difference between air as a human right and guaranteed oxygen access. Octogenarians who barely know what day it is are calling countless citizens while sitting on a dais made of ignorance that was built on the graves of the slaves made to labor for its self-declared significance, and all to build a Congress full of millionaires who make their fortunes insider trading while they shit on all the indigent. So I got a bone to pick with our leaders, and I'll start with the ligaments. I'll pick right through the muscle, dig the marrow out, and serve it to the unhoused millions living in their minivans, watching their belongings get evicted out their tenement. See, I have a dream where we breach the walls of Congress and just let them in. And what happens next will survive in only text, because there won't be any evidence. There will only be that heavy kind of feeling that pervades a space where there had been a reckoning, and you can feel its remnants. Let any man who enters seeking power know that those who came before him suffocated on their eminence. That there once was a seal on the wall, but we quartered it and scattered all the pieces that it might prevent its semblance. And so we end the great experiment. We'll take all your billions, leave you 2 coins for the ferryman. Leave you drifting on a Dutchman, floating derelict among the wretched seraphim. For holy is the hand that wiped the land clean of those who pose as gentlemen. That's my time, honey. Cue the thunderclap and strike the theremin. So we end the great experiment. And that's a great experiment.
Who are these people?
All right. The Grift. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
La da 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 Last stand, I came to deliver. Been called a Clinton operative, a Russian, and a grifter. By libs, awash in student debt, and proud to be an intern. Sucking up to pigs who'll get a tax cut in the midterms. You cut the ties, but never heal the wrist burns. Capitalist shackles wrap and penetrate like ringworms around the necks of those whose deaths will not affect the king's purse or the coffers of the company the king serves, who manufacture mandated tinctures. Their safety data hanging from a fixture, half a mile skyward, dangling from the rafters. My grift is sobbing till I'm cackling with laughter. I guess I would have made a decent actor. I'd be great at crying on command until they cut plus 40 minutes after. When the director waves a hand, it ain't a rap, it's now a legal matter. Sugar, my grift is weeping on the mic until I'm hacking up airstrike verses like it's bombs away and batter up. Swinging on these bigots, they keep killing us to fatten up. Kill the switch, eat the rich, I think they're finally fat enough. Just grab your knife and fork, the world is yours, just say you had enough. And if you're humpy, you can go ahead and laugh it up. And tell me how the most important vote I'll ever cast is like the choosing of a bus, in that it might not take you anywhere you want, but no one can deny the fact the bus is now no longer where it was, and that's the kind of progress I should celebrate and trust. Spoken like a kid who never took a bus.
Spoken like some piece of shit that used some cash to mask their stink and truly thinks they're one of us. Spoken like a terminally unserious person who equates our cries for rights to mixed up orders from a server. It paints a privileged picture of what you would label urgent if the worst thing you've experienced in life has been the time your waiter accidentally brought a tray of gold flake scallop when you clearly ordered gold flaked urchin. And now you're storming out the restaurant and hopping in your Tesla. You got 80 pounds of Tony Fauci merchant. Rewind to change won't make you wait such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. Rewind to chains won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. No, it's best to place your bets on weaponizing the identity of every limp progressive claiming grassroots integrity. Policy's a slippery slope for all of its complexity, so flex your brave resistance with this Ilhan Omar NFT. It's numbered 1 of 723, and each depicts her valiantly championing a bill before she lays it at a donor's feet. And she can throw her hands up in the air with AOC and say, if only Nina Turner could have voted present too, that's why we need another seat. We need some more progressives we elect to only tweet, who live to serve Humana, and their label of elective slapped on every patient's gravest needs. And every station plays the theme that medical professionals agree on the effectiveness and safety of injections authorized for this emergency. And in purely unrelated news, the profits of the ones who manufacture vaccines just increased by nearly 36 billion with a fucking B. Christ, sometimes it feels like we're the only ones that see. Sometimes it feels like all of us are lost at sea. And every time we think we see an island on the tip of the horizon, it turns out to be another measure making sure we're kept in the watchful eye of murderous authority. So I guess my grift is crying for the future they denied us, where the people who would buy us are a mockable minority. And we are more than genomes under warranty. We are more than serfs in constant quarantine. If I had a single breath left, I'd let the chorus scream that I denounce our leaders claiming none for all and more for me. None for all and more for me. None for all and more for me. Rewind to a chance will make you wait such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. Oh, rewind to a chance will make you wait such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. Oh, and that's the grift, folks.
Who are these people?
Now what you're following, that's idolatry, that's just fake. And all that wallowing that you tolerate, that's not fair. The kings of colony watched autonomy make our graves. The kings of colony know no policy, only reign. Now what you fall asleep, it won't bother you what they say. But the kings of colony, while they slaughter, they still complain. And we say, please color me, still too solemnly, still too plain. All hail economy, praise the pharmacy, seas in flame. They're buying up Hawaii, and the smoke's not even cleared. Those vultures smelled the fire, and an enterprise appeared. Investment opportunities were melted down, communities leave vacant space. BlackRock has been lusting for years. The council meets in private. They don't discuss survivors. Concerns above construction groups are all Lahaina hears. They'll wander through your city with this mocking sword of pity, next to Oprah and her camera crew who tour the Trail of Tears, where footage flows as freely as the stream of liquid steel and the pools of pure aluminum that trickled down your wheels. And Biden's come to say he knows exactly how it feels, cause he had a kitchen fire once and had to miss a meal. And people still believe that piece of shit deserves your vote, like he's not why supplies are being smuggled in by boat, like he's not why our citizens were forced to stay and roast. And he can't unfreeze your funding, folks, cause Azov needs it most. I'll bet my every dollar Biden watched it with a smile. I bet he knows the whereabouts of every missing child. He's just the kind of man who lives to trample something tribal, collecting culture's corpses just to throw them on the pile. Like he and all his buddies didn't dream about the day when those who dared defy the donor class were cleared away. When home insurance triples and you can't afford to stay, your land falls to the hands of those whose windfall fans the flames. The state will take Lahaina, they'll bastardize its name, and tourism will swarm it all the same. You see, the state we left Lahaina shows the ground rules of the game, the planes that in the night ignite the planes. And if questions raised that reckon the potential use of lasers, I suggest you take a closer shave by way of Occam's razor. And if those civilians stood between this country and its gains, there's really nothing further to explain. Because you may know this already if you truly know our past, but this ain't the first occasion and it will not be the last, where Americans are kettled in and made to bear the blast, barricaded in and left for ash. How many in Lahaina now are lying there awake? They still can hear the city we left leveled in our wake. They still hear all the people that we let the fire take, instructed from above to stay in place. So look to the horizon, cause a fire comes for you. Desires made incarnate of the power-hungry few who instructed the police to not let anybody through, to barricade them in, and so they do. And that's Kings of Colony.
Who are these people?
So here we go. We're getting down. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I had anything to start, but I don't think we do. So here we go. Little Wilford Brimley looking Lorax. It's hard not to do my what's his name? Walter Brennan. When I do the Lorax, because that's usually what I do for Fox for a lot of Seuss voices. So be like, I'm the Lorax, I speak for the trees. But I won't do that tonight.
We love Jesse voices. Come on, man.
Okay. All right, here we go. The Lorax by Dr. Seuss. At the far end of town, where the grickle grass grows, and the wind smells slow and sour when it blows, and no birds ever sing excepting old crows, is the street of the lifted Lorax. And deep in the grickle grass, some people say, if you look deep enough, you can still see today where the Lorax once stood just as long as it could, before somebody lifted the Lorax away. What was the Lorax, and why was it there? And why was it lifted and taken somewhere from the far end of town where the grickle grass grows? The old Onceler still lives here. Ask him, he knows. You won't see the Onceler. Don't knock at his door. He stays in his lurkum on top of his store. He lurks in his lurkum cold under the roof, where he makes his own clothes out of miff-muffred moof. And on special dank midnights in August he peeks out of the shutters, and sometimes he speaks and tells how the Lorax was lifted away. He'll tell you, perhaps, if you're willing to pay. On the end of a rope, he lets down a tin pail, and you have to toss in 15 cents and a nail and the shell of a great-great-great-grandfather snail. Then he pulls up the pail, makes a most careful count to see if you've paid him the proper amount. Then he hides what you've paid him away in his snub, his secret strange hole in his grovulous glove. Then he grunts, I will call you by whispermophone, for the secrets I tell are for your ears alone. Slop! Down slups the whispermophone to your ear, and the old Onceler's whispers are not very clear, since they have to come down through a snurgly hose, and he sounds as if he had smallish bees up his nose. Now I'll tell you, he says, with his teeth sounding gray, how the Lorax got lifted and taken away. It all started way back, such a long, long time back. Way back in the days when the grass was still green, and the pond was still wet, and the clouds were still clean, and the song of the swami swans rang out in space, one morning I came to this glorious place. And I first saw the trees, the truffula trees, the bright-colored tufts of the truffula trees, mile after mile in the fresh morning breeze. And under the trees I saw brown barbaloots, frisking about in their barbaloot suits as they played in the shade and ate truffula fruits. From the ripulous pond came the comfortable sound of the humming fish humming while splashing around. But those trees, those truffula trees, all my life I'd been searching for trees such as these. The touch of their tufts was much softer than silk, and they had the sweet smell of fresh butterfly milk. I felt a great leaping of joy in my heart. I knew just what I'd do. I unloaded my cart. In no time at all, I had built a small shop. Then I chopped down a truffula tree with one chop. And with great skillful skill and with great speedy speed, I took the soft tuft and I knitted a thneed. The instant I'd finished, I heard a gazump. I looked. I saw something pop out of the stump of the tree I'd chopped down. It was sort of a man. Describe him? That's hard. I don't know if I can. He was shortish and oldish and brownish and mossy. And he spoke with a voice that was sharpish and bossy. Mister, he said with a sawdusty sneeze, I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees. I speak for the trees have no tongues. And I'm asking you, sir, at the top of my lungs. He was very upset as he shouted and puffed, What's that thing you've made out of my truffula tuft? Look, Lorax, I said, there's no cause for alarm. I chopped down one tree. I'm doing no harm. I'm being quite useful. This thing is a thneed. A thneed's a fine something that all people need. It's a shirt, it's a sock, it's a glove, it's a hat. But it has other uses, yes, far beyond that. You can use it for carpets, for pillows, for sheets, or curtains, or covers for bicycle seats. The Lorax said, Sir, you are crazy with greed. There's no one on earth that would buy that fool thneed. But the very next minute I proved he was wrong. For just at that minute a chap came along, and he thought that the thneed I had knitted was great. He happily bought it for $3.98. I laughed at the Lorax. You poor stupid guy. You never can tell what some people will buy. I repeat, cried the Lorax, I speak for the trees. I'm busy, I told him. Shut up, if you please. I rushed across the room, and in no time at all, built a radio phone. I put in a quick call. I called all my brothers and uncles and aunts, and I said, listen here, here's a wonderful chance for the whole Onceler family to get mighty rich. Get over here fast. Take the road to North Nitch, turn left at Weehawken, sharp right at South Stitch. And in no time at all, in the factory I built, the whole Onceler family was working full tilt. We were all knitting thneeds, just as busy as bees, to the sound of the chopping of truffula trees. Then, oh, baby, oh, how my business did grow. Now chopping one tree at a time was too slow. So I quickly invented my super axe hacker, which whacked off 4 truffula trees at one smacker. We were making thneeds 4 times as fast as before, and that Lorax, he didn't show up anymore. But the next week, he knocked on my new office door. He snapped, I'm the Lorax who speaks for the trees, which you seem to be chopping as fast as you please. But I'm also in charge of the brown barbaloots, who played in the shade in their barbaloot suits and happily lived eating truffula fruits. Well, now, thanks to your hacking my trees to the ground, there's not enough truffula fruit to go round. And my poor barbaloots are all getting the crummies because they have gas and no food in their tummies. They love living here, but I can't let them stay. They'll have to find food, and I hope that they may. Good luck, boys, he cried, and he sent them away. I, the Onceler, felt sad as I watched them all go, but business is business, and business must grow, regardless of crummies and tummies, you know. I meant no harm, I most truly did not, but I had to grow bigger, so bigger I got. I biggered my factory, I biggered my roads, I biggered my wagons, I biggered the loads of the thneeds I shipped out. I was shipping them forth, to the south, to the east, to the west, to the north. I went right on biggering, selling more thneeds, and I biggered my money, which everyone needs. Ooh, sorry about that. Then, again he came back. I was fixing some pipes when that old nuisance Lorax came back with more gripes. I am the Lorax! He coughed and he whiffed, he sneezed and he snuffled, he snargled, he sniffed. Onceler! He cried with a cruffulous croak. Onceler, you're making such smogulous smoke. My poor swami swans, why, they can't sing a note. No one can sing who has smog in his throat. And so, said the Lorax, please pardon my cough. They cannot live here, so I'm sending them off. Where will they go? I don't hopefully know. They may have to fly for a month or a year to escape from the smog you've smogged up around here. What's more, snapped the Lorax, his dander was up, let me say a few words about gluppity-glup. Your machinery chugs on day and night without stop, making gluppity-glup, also sloppity-slop. And what do you do with this leftover goo? I'll show you, you dirty old Onceler man, you. You're glumping the pond where the hummingfish hummed. No more can they hum, for their gills are all gummed. So I'm sending them off. All their future is dreary. They'll walk on their fins and get woefully weary, in search of some water that isn't so smeary. And then I got mad. I got terribly mad. I yelled at the Lorax, now listen here, Dad. All you do is yap, yap, and say bad, 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 bad. Well, I have my rights, sir, and I'm telling you, I intend to go on doing just what I do. And for your information, you Lorax, I'm figuring on biggering and biggering and biggering and biggering, turning more truffula trees into thneeds, which everyone needs. And at that very moment, we heard a loud whack. From outside in the fields came a sickening smack of an axe on a tree. Then we heard the tree fall, the very last truffula tree of them all. No more trees, no more thneeds, no more work to be done. So in time, my uncles and aunts, everyone, all waved me goodbye. They jumped into my cars and drove away under the smoke-smuggered stars. Now all that was left 'neath the bad-smelling sky was my big empty factory, the Lorax, and I. The Lorax said nothing, just gave me a glance, just gave me a very sad, sad backward glance as he lifted himself by the seat of his pants. And I'll never forget the grim look on his face when he hoisted himself and took leave of this place through a hole in the smog without leaving a trace. And all that the Lorax left here in this mess was a small pile of rocks with the one word, unless. Whatever that meant, well, I just couldn't guess. That was long, long ago, but each day since that day, I've sat here and worried away through the years while my buildings have fallen apart. I've worried about it with all of my heart. But now, says the Onceler, now that you're here, the word of the Lorax seems perfectly clear, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot. Nothing is going to get better. It's not. So, catch, calls the Onceler, and he lets something fall. It's a truffula seed. It's the last one of all. You're in charge of the last of the truffula seeds, and truffula trees are what everyone needs. Plant a new truffula. Treat it with care. Give it clean water and feed it fresh air. Grow a forest. Protect it from axes that hack. Then the Lorax and all of his friends may come back. And that's the Lorax.
Who are these people?
This is a really great story song and a fairly morbid one, but man, what a whopper. This is by a band called the Decemberists. This is the Mariner's Revenge song. We are two mariners, our ship's sole survivors, in this belly of a whale. Its ribs are ceiling beams, its guts are carpeting. I guess we have some time to kill. You may not remember me, I was a child of 3, and you a lad of 18. But I remember you, and I will relate to you just how our histories interweave. At the time you were a rake and a roustabout, spending all your money on the whores and hounds. You had a charming air, all cheap and debonair, my widowed mother found so sweet. And so she took you in, her sheets still warm with him, now filled with filth and foul disease. As time wore on, you proved a debt-ridden drunken mess, leaving my mother a poor consumptive wretch. And then you disappeared, your gambling arrears, the only thing you left behind. And then the magistrate reclaimed our small estate and my poor mum. And then one day in spring, my dear sweet mother died. But before she did, I took her hand as she dying cried. Oh,
Bind him, tie him to a pole and break his fingers to splinters. Drag him to a hole until he wakes up naked, clawing at the ceiling of his grave. Oh, it took me 15 years to swallow all my tears among the urchins in the street, until the priory took pity and hired me to keep its vestry nice and neat. But never once in the employ of these holy men did I ever once turn my mind from the thought of revenge. Oh, one night I overheard the prior exchanging words with a penitent whaler from the sea. The captain of his ship, who matched you toe to toe, was known for wanton cruelty. The following day I shipped to sea with the privateer, and in the whistle of the wind I could almost hear, bind him, tie him to a pole and break his fingers to splinters. Drag him to a hole until he wakes up naked, clawing at the ceiling of his grave. And then that fateful night, we had you in our sight. After 20 months at sea, your starboard flanker beam, I was getting my muskets clean when came this rumbling from beneath. The ocean shook, the sky went black, and the captain quailed. And before us grew the angry jaws of a giant whale. Don't know how I survived. Crew all was chewed alive. I must have slipped between his teeth. But oh, what providence, what divine intelligence, that you should survive as well as me. Well, it gives my heart great joy to see your eyes filled with fear. Lean in close and let me whisper the last words you'll hear. Bind him, tie him to a pole and break his fingers to splinters. Drag him to a hole until he wakes up naked, clawing at the ceiling of his grave.
And that's the Mariner's Revenge song.
Wow.
Who are these people?
So yeah, get cozy. This is H.P. Lovecraft. This story is 101 years old. This is 1921. This is called The Music of Eric Zahn. I have examined maps of the city with the greatest care, yet I have never again found the Rue d'Orsay. These maps have not been modern maps alone, for I know that names change. I have, on the contrary, delved deeply into all the antiquities of the place, and I have personally explored every region of whatever name which could possibly answer to the street I knew as the Rue d'Orsay. But despite all I have done, it remains a humiliating fact that I cannot find the house, the street, or even the locality where during the last months of my impoverished life as a student of metaphysics at the university, I heard the music of Erich Zahn. That my memory is broken, I do not wonder, for my health, physical and mental, was gravely disturbed throughout the period of my residence in the Rue d'Orsay, and I recall that I took none of my few acquaintances there. But that I cannot find the place again is both singular and perplexing, for it was within a half-hour's walk of the university, and was distinguished by peculiarities which could hardly be forgotten by anyone who had been there. I have never met a person who has seen the Rue d'Orsay. It lay across a dark river, bordered by precipitous brick, blear-windowed warehouses, and spanned by a ponderous bridge of dark stone. It was always shadowy along the river, as if the smoke of neighboring factories shut out the sun perpetually. And the river was also odorous, with evil stenches which I have never smelled elsewhere, and which may someday help me to find it, since I should recognize them at once. Beyond the bridge were narrow cobbled streets with rails, and then came the ascent, at first gradual, but incredibly steep as the Rue d'Orsay was reached. I have never seen another street as narrow and steep. It was almost a cliff closed to all vehicles, consisting in several places of flights of steps, and ending at the top in a lofty ivied wall. Its paving was irregular, sometimes stone slabs, sometimes cobblestones, and sometimes bare earth, with struggling greenish-gray vegetation. The houses were tall, peaked-roofed, incredibly old, and crazily leaning backward, forward, and sidewise. Occasionally, an opposite pair, both leaning forward, almost met across the street like an arch. And certainly they kept most of the light from the ground below. There were a few overhead bridges from house to house across the street. The inhabitants of that street impressed me peculiarly. At first I thought it was because they were all silent and reticent, but later decided it was because they were all very old. I do not know how I came to live on such a street, but I was not myself when I moved there. I'd been living in many poor places, always evicted for want of money, until at last I came upon that tottering house in the Rue d'Orsay, which was kept by the paralytic Blandot. It was the third house from the top of the street, and by far the tallest of them all. My room was on the 5th story, the only inhabited room there, since the house was almost empty. On the night I arrived, I heard strange music from the peaked garret overhead. And the next day, I asked old Blandot about it. He told me it was an old German viol player, a strange, dumb man who signed his name as Erich Zahn, and who played evenings in a cheap theater orchestra, adding that his desire to play in the night after his return from theater was the reason he had chosen this lofty and isolated garret room, whose single gable window was the only point on the street from which one could look over the terminating wall at the declivity and panorama beyond. Thereafter, I heard Zahn every night, and although he kept me awake, I was haunted by the weirdness of his music. Knowing little of the art myself, I was yet certain that none of his harmonies had any relation to music I had heard before, and I concluded that he was a composer of highly original genius. The longer I listened, the more I was fascinated, until after a week I resolved to make the old man's acquaintance. One night, as he was returning from his work, I intercepted Zahn in the hallway and told him that I would like to know him and be with him when he played. He was a small, lean, bent person with shabby clothes, blue eyes, a grotesque satyr-like face, and nearly bald head, and at my first words he seemed both angered and frightened. My obvious friendliness, however, finally melted him, and he grudgingly motioned me to follow him up the dark, creaking, and rickety attic stairs. His room, one of only 2 in the steeply pitched garret, was on the west side, toward the high wall that formed the upper end of the street. Its size was very great, and seemed the greater because of its extraordinary barrenness and neglect. Of furniture, there was only a narrow iron bedstead, a dingy washstand, a small table, a large bookcase, an iron music rack, and 3 old-fashioned chairs. Sheets of music were piled in disorder about the floor, and the walls were of bare boards and had probably never known plaster, whilst the abundance of dust and cobwebs made the place seem more deserted than inhabited. Evidently, Erich Zahn's world of beauty lay in some far cosmos of the imagination. Motioning me to sit down, the dumb man closed the door, turned the large wooden bolt, and lighted a candle to augment the one he had brought with him. He now removed his vial from its moth-eaten covering, and taking it, seated himself in the least uncomfortable of the chairs. I love that line. He did not employ the music rack, but offering no choice and playing from memory, he enchanted me for over an hour with strains I had never heard before, strains which must have been of his own devising. To describe their exact nature is impossible for one unversed in music. They were a kind of fugue with recurrent passages of the most captivating quality, but to me were notable for the absence of any of the weird notes I had overheard from my room below on other occasions. Those haunting notes I had remembered and had often hummed and whistled inaccurately to myself, so when the player at length laid down his bow, I asked him if he would render some of them. As I began my request, the wrinkled, satyr-like face lost the bored placidity it had possessed during the playing, and seemed to show that same curious mixture of anger and fright which I had noticed when I first accosted the old man. For a moment I was inclined to use persuasion, regarding rather lightly the whims of senility, and I even tried to awaken my host's weirder mood by whistling a few of the strains to which I had listened the night before. But I did not pursue this course for more than a moment, for when the dumb musician recognized the whistled air, his face grew suddenly distorted, with an expression wholly beyond analysis, and his long, cold, bony right hand reached out to stop my mouth and silence the crude imitation. As he did this, he further demonstrated his eccentricity by casting a startled glance toward the lone curtained window, as if fearful of some intruder. A glance doubly absurd since the garret stood high and inaccessible above all the adjacent roofs, this window being the only point on the steep street, as the concierge had told me, from which one could see over the wall at the summit. The old man's glance brought Blandot's remark to my mind, and with a certain capriciousness, I felt a wish to look out over the wide and dizzying panorama of moonlit roofs and city lights beyond the hilltop, which of all the dwellers in the Rue d'Orsay only this crabbed musician could see. I moved toward the window, and I would have drawn aside the nondescript curtains, when, with a frightened rage even greater than before, the dumb lodger was upon me again, this time motioning with his head toward the door, as he nervously strove to drag me thither with both hands. Now, thoroughly disgusted with my host, I ordered him to release me, and I told him I would go at once. His clutch relaxed, and as he saw my disgust and offense, his own anger seemed to subside. He tightened his relaxing grip, but this time in a friendly manner, forcing me into a chair. Then, with an appearance of wistfulness, crossing to the littered table, where he wrote many words with a pencil in the labored French of a foreigner. The note which he finally handed me was an appeal for tolerance and forgiveness. Zahn said that he was old, lonely, and afflicted with strange fears and nervous disorders connected with his music and with other things. He had enjoyed my listening to his music and wished I would come again and not mind his eccentricities. But he could not play to another his weird harmonies, and he could not bear hearing them from another. He had not known until our hallway conversation that I could overhear his playing in my room, and now asked me if I would arrange with Blandot to take a lower room where I could not hear him in the night. He would, he wrote, defray the difference in rent. As I sat, deciphering the execrable French, I felt more lenient toward the old man. He was a victim of physical and nervous suffering, as was I, and my metaphysical studies had taught me kindness. In that silence, there came a slight sound from the window. The shutter must have rattled in the night wind, and for some reason I started almost as violently as did Erich Zahn. So when I had finished reading, I shook my host by the hand, and I departed as a friend. The next day, Blandot gave me a more expensive room on the 3rd floor, between the apartments of an aged moneylender and the room of a respected upholsterer. There was no one on the 4th floor. It was not long before I found that Zahn's eagerness for my company was not as great as it had seemed while he was persuading me to move down from the 5th story. He did not ask me to call on him, and when I did call, he appeared uneasy and played listlessly. This was always at night. In the day he slept and would admit no one. My liking for him did not grow, though the attic room and the weird music seemed to hold an odd fascination for me. I had a curious desire to look out of that window, over the wall and down the unseen slope, at the glittering roofs and spires which must lie outspread there. Once I went up to the garret during theater hours when Zahn was away, but the door was locked. What I did succeed in doing was to overhear the nocturnal playing of the dumb old man. At first, I would tiptoe up to my old 5th floor. Then I grew bold enough to climb the last creaking staircase to that peaked garret. There, in the narrow hall, outside the bolted door with the covered keyhole, I often heard sounds which filled me with an indefinable dread. The dread of vague wonder and brooding mystery. It was not that the sounds were hideous, for they were not, but that they held vibrations suggesting nothing on this globe of earth, and that at certain intervals they assumed a symphonic quality which I could hardly conceive as produced by one player. Certainly, Erich Zahn was a genius of wild power. As the weeks passed, the playing grew wilder, whilst the old musician acquired an increasing haggardness and a furtiveness pitiful to behold. He now refused to admit me at any time, and he shunned me whenever we met on the stairs. Then one night, as I listened at the door, I heard the shrieking viol swell into a chaotic babble of sound, a pandemonium which would have led me to doubt my own shaking sanity had there not come from behind that barred portal a piteous proof that the horror was real. The awful, inarticulate cry which only a mute can utter, and which rises only in moments of the most terrible fear or anguish. I knocked repeatedly at the door, but I received no response. Afterward, I waited in the black hallway, shivering with cold and fear, till I heard the poor musician's feeble effort to rise from the floor by the aid of a chair. Believing him just conscious after a fainting fit, I renewed my rapping, at the same time calling out my name reassuringly. I heard Zahn stumble to the window and close both shutter and sash, and then stumble to the door, which he falteringly unfastened to admit me. This time, his delight at having me present was real, for his distorted face gleamed with relief, while he clutched at my coat as a child clutched at its mother's skirts. Shaking pathetically, the old man forced me into a chair, whilst he sank into another, beside which his viol and bow lay carelessly on the floor. He sat for some time inactive, nodding oddly, but having a paradoxical suggestion of intense and frightened listening. Subsequently, he seemed to be satisfied, and crossing to a chair by the table, he wrote a brief note, handed it to me, and returned to the table, where he began to write rapidly and incessantly. The note implored me, in the name of mercy, and for the sake of my own curiosity, to wait where I was, while he prepared a full account, in German, of all the marvels and terrors which beset him. I waited, and the dumb man's pencil flew. It was perhaps an hour later, while I still waited, and while the old musician's feverishly written sheets still continued to pile up, that I saw him start, as from the hint of a horrible shock. Unmistakably, he was looking at the curtained window and listening shudderingly. Then I half fancied I heard a sound myself, though it was not a horrible sound, but rather an exquisitely low and infinitely distant musical note, suggesting a player in one of the neighboring houses, or in some abode beyond the lofty wall over which I had never been able to look. Upon Zahn, the effect was terrible, for dropping his pencil, suddenly he rose, seized his viol, and commenced to rend the night with the wildest playing I had ever heard from his bow, save when listening at the barred door. It would be useless to describe the playing of Eric Zahn on that dreadful night. It was more horrible than anything I'd overheard because I could now see the expression of his face and could realize that this time the motive was stark fear. He was trying to make a noise, to ward something off or drown something out. What, I could not imagine, awesome though I felt it must be. The playing grew fantastic, tenuous, and hysterical, yet kept to the last the qualities of supreme genius which I knew this strange old man possessed. I recognized the air. It was a wild Hungarian dance, popular in the theaters, and I reflected for a moment that this was the first time I'd ever heard Zahn play the work of another composer. Louder and louder, wilder and wilder, mounted the shrieking and whining of that desperate viol. The player was dripping with an uncanny perspiration and twisted like a monkey, always looking frantically at the curtained window. In his frenzied strains, I could almost see shadowy satyrs and bacchanals dancing and whirling insanely through the seething abysses of clouds and smoke and lightning. And then I thought I heard a shriller, steadier note that was not from the viol, a calm, deliberate, purposeful, mocking note from far away in the west. At this juncture, the shutter began to rattle in a howling night wind which had sprung up outside as if in answer to the mad playing within. Zahn's screaming viol now outdid itself, emitting sounds I had never thought a viol could emit. The shutter rattled more loudly, unfastened, and commenced slamming against the window. Then the glass broke shiveringly under the persistent impacts, and that chill wind rushed in, making the candles sputter and rustling the sheets of paper on the table where Zahn had begun to write out his horrible secret. I looked at Zahn and saw that he was past conscious observation. His blue eyes were bulging, glassy, and sightless, and that frantic playing had become a blind, mechanical, unrecognizable orgy that no pen could even suggest. A sudden gust, stronger than the others, caught up the manuscript and bore it toward the window. I followed the flying sheets in desperation, but they were gone before I reached the demolished panes. Then I remembered my old wish to gaze from this window, the only window in the Rue d'Orsay from which one might see the slope beyond the wall, and the city outspread beneath. It was very dark, but the city's lights always burned, and I expected to see them there amidst the rain and the wind. Yet when I looked from the highest of all gable windows, looked while the candles sputtered and the insane viol howled with the night wind, I saw no city spread below, and no friendly lights gleamed from remembered spaces, but only the blackness of space illimitable, unimagined space alive with motion and music and having no semblance of anything on earth. And as I stood there looking in terror, the wind blew out both candles in that ancient peaked garret, leaving me in savage, impenetrable darkness, with chaos and pandemonium before me, and the demon madness of that night-baying viol behind me. I staggered back in the dark, without the means of striking a light, crashing against the table, overturning a chair, and finally groping my way to the place from the blackness screamed with that shocking music. To save myself and Eric Zahn, I could at least try, whatever the powers opposed to me. Once, I thought some chill thing brushed me, and I screamed, but my scream could not be heard above that hideous viol. Suddenly, out of the blackness, the madly sawing bow struck me, and I knew I was close to the player. I felt ahead, touched the back of his chair, and found and shook his shoulder in an effort to bring him to his senses. He did not respond, and still the viol shrieked on without slackening. I moved my hand to his head, whose mechanical nodding I was able to stop, and I shouted in his ear that we both must flee from these unknown things of the night. But he neither answered me nor abated the frenzy of his unutterable music, while all through the garret strange currents of wind seemed to dance in the darkness and babble. When my hand touched his ear, I shuddered, though I knew not why. Not until I felt the still face, the ice-cold, stiffened, unbreathing face whose glassy eyes bulged uselessly into the void. Then by some miracle, finding the door and the large wooden bolt, I plunged wildly away from that glassy-eyed thing in the dark, and from the ghoulish howling of that accursed viol whose fury increased even as I plunged. leaping, floating, flying down those endless stairs, through the dark house, racing mindlessly out into the narrow, steep, and ancient street of steps and tottering houses, clattering down steps and over cobbles to the lower streets, that putrid canyon-walled river, panting across the great dark bridge to the broader, healthier streets and boulevards we know. All these are terrible impressions that linger with me. And I recall that there was no wind, and that the moon was out, and that all the lights of the city twinkled. Despite my most careful searches and investigations, I have never since been able to find the Rue d'Orsay. But I am not wholly sorry, either for this or for the loss in undreamable abysses of the closely written sheets which alone could have explained the music of Eric Zahn.
Yeah, take a long drink after that.
And scene.
Woo.
Who are these people?
This was one of those songs early on. Once she and I started singing together and working out songs, I, being the obnoxious music nerd I am, just start dumping band after band and song after song. Have you heard this? Do you know this song? We should sing this together. And we found that we, especially early on, any Maynard stuff was so fun to harmonize on. And I was just discovering, all the side project like Pussifer stuff, and Horizons especially was a song that one of the first things she and I did harmonies and stuff on. And she had never heard this song, and it was really, really fun to introduce this to her and play this for her a lot, which I always did. So, bear with me on this one because it has been a hot second. Okay. This actually isn't a Pussifer song. I guess I should have stressed. This is a Maynard. This is a Perfect Circle. Although a Perfect Circle cover, this is not an original of theirs, but a song that they made infinitely better because the original, I can't remember who did it. So I guess I'm not as much of a music nerd as I thought I was, but I know that the original is nowhere near what ABC did with it, and is not enjoyable in my humble music nerd opinion.
Say hello to the rug's topography. It holds quite a lot of interest with your face down on it. Say hello to all the apples on the ground. They were once in your eyes, but you sneezed them out while sleeping. I'm taking her home with me, all dressed in white. She's got everything I need. Pharmacy keys, she's falling hard for me. I can see it in her eyes. She acts just like a nurse with all the other guys. Say hello to all the shrinking in your head. You can feel it, but you know it's there, so don't neglect it. Say hello to everything you've left behind, that's even more a part of your life now that you can touch it. all dressed in white. She's got everything I need, some pills and a little cup. She's falling hard for me, I can see it in her eyes. She acts just like a nurse with all the other guys. I'm taking her home with me, all dressed in white. She's got everything I need, pharmacy keys. She's falling hard for me, I can see it in her eyes. She acts just like a nurse with all the other guys.
And that is The Nurse Who Loved Me by A Perfect Circle.
Who are these people?
So, here we go. This is the Oil Baron Rescue Plan.
Nice.
Couldn't have been me, sir. I was front row in my AOC t-shirt, foie gras sucking on a press release, sir. My head down, fourth shot, good little sheep, sir. Sit down, sweetie, the adults are gonna speak first. They trust the science and they're terrified of research. Here to thank our healthcare heroes, they've been feeding to the burnout, feet first. Till suddenly they dip mid-shift, take a header off a bridge. Such a shame, they were really such a sweet nurse. Now they'll never get the card and the cold slice of pizza meant to thank them for their teamwork. Now they'll never get that baggie full of Chex Mix, which would be the one reward they'd see for the moms they've had to intubate, and the countless cries of grief since we've been haunted by the specter of the C-word. Now all the applause for our healthcare heroes rings a very hollow note because we played it out like Freebird. See, add the ones and zeros and our fragile checks and balances are checks for all the wealthy who have such unholy talents that we think it's patriotic that we all got zero balances. And re-elect Pelosi so she'll face our toughest challenges, which is analogous to water for a drowning man. Nancy disregards our impoverished with a spiteful and dismissive little waving of her withered hand. 'Cause 500,000 freezing on the streets is Biden's winter plan. And I bet you swore they told you were voting for a different man. But really, all you wanted was a different man. It didn't make a fucking difference if he finishes the previous inhabitant's agenda, starts auctioning protected land. Biden's born to leap at any war a donor's check demands. Turns out that you can't cure greed when it infects a man. Once they lose respect for human life and focus all their fucking efforts on the Oil Baron Rescue Plan. Honey, what are we to Hecuba or Hecuba to us that if she's starving we should give a damn? Why should we be moved to tears if someone isn't eating? God, we won't even recognize that food is essential to our being. It's just us and motherfucking Israel who will not guarantee that food's a basic human right. Because starvation is our favorite tool of genocide disguised as sanctioned democratic healing. That's me in the corner, losing my religion, gouging out my eyes and then dancing on the ceiling. Jesus fucking Christ, what a feeling. That's the Oil Baron Rescue Plan.
Who are these people?
So this is the record. Now let the record show there are no morals, there are only lessons to be learned when you are staring down a precipice or hanging from a ledge. How can someone justify decisions that they made to everybody that depends on them, especially somebody who's too young to understand why you behaved the way you did or said the things you said? This is just a phase and I'll be happy when it's over. Call me Grateful Dead. Call me anything you like, my name is late for bed. Early for the sky, which by the by I think tonight I'll paint it fever red with the delirium of wildfire imminence. And this will burn your mission statement down, melt your churches to the ground, and only sound the smoke alarm when it's too late to salvage any grace or scrap a charred deliverance. See, my holy path led me to fast, and slowly I degraded till at last I bit the bullet, and it didn't do a thing for me, so now I suck the filament. And if I see a dangling ligament, I'll probably stand in awe of it a minute, then I'll probably start gnawing it. In one sitting, I'll be eating and violently shitting all of it. Then make a tape and send it straight to Parliament, like I think I've got what it takes to step behind your armaments. It's like my mind just can't sit still a minute, ill-equipped or insufficient. Incidentally, I just can't remember having instances of inner peace, just never ceasing bits and pieces of some kind of self-defeating terrorism. So I don't need some sign to point me toward the light, I'm trying to find out where it isn't. The glare impairs my vision. See? As long as I have free will and I'm willing. And there's the rub, there's the part that always takes a minute. There's the part that I don't have the heart to try killing. The little part of me I'm done explaining and distilling. The part that you don't think is worth the paper where you print the billing. Incidentally, that's the only part of me I ever found fulfilling. So every time a bell rings, a wellspring dries up, and I just gotta keep drilling. Until it's lost the meaning, lost the thrill, or lost the feeling. Till I could spit it just the same, looking out across a crowd or staring at the ceiling. And I could spit it just the same, looking down into the ground, where I'd be bound to find some kind of healing. Lost my job at the casino, my superiors conceded I was pretty shit at dealing. But I had scrawled that on my resume, I guess that they thought I had a sarcastic way with what I say, or maybe I just fumbled an attempt to be endearing. It's not the first time, if you'd believe it. It's not the first time I crossed the line when in my mind I heard myself say, leave it. It's not the first time that my head was in my hands and I heard myself say, beat it. Where's that tape? Let it play, let the record state I think I got what it takes to finally step behind my sense of reason. Where's that tape? Let it play, let the record state I think I've got what it takes to finally step behind my sense of reason.
Who are these people?
This is called The Sculptor. There used to be a sculptor who portrayed a human face with features that seemed born instead of molded into place, that resonated warmth and life from out of empty space, and after it was made, it was forgotten. So he tried to seek out buyers for the products of his trade, the simple mugs and bowls that through routine he sat and made, but no one in the market liked the work enough to pay, so in desperation, he sought out a bargain. He walked into a dusty shop he'd noticed on the street, and laid out all his pottery at the small shop owner's feet. Anything you buy, he said, means I can finally eat. And the owner said, I see, a starving artist. Is there nothing that you've sculpted that can speak to someone's soul, that could hold a bit more meaning than these blank and empty bowls? Sculpt and sell me something that makes me feel like I'm whole, and I'd never known a fragment had departed. Well, all the sculptor had was the face he'd left at home. So he bid the owner wait, and he raced down the cobbled stone, and he brought the face he'd crafted, and he pushed aside the bowls, and he placed it on the ground to be regarded. Well, the owner stood entranced a moment, frozen into space. Never, he then mumbled, I have never seen such grace. I have never seen such beauty in a living human face as I see here in the one that you've created. And so it came to be that in one passing of the moon, the sculptor went from starving to exalted to immune, commissioned by the king to sculpt the faces in his tomb, and commissioned by the nobles for a face in every room. His sculptures spoke to status more than mere wealth could assume, for his faces shamed what formerly was flawless. So he feasts on adoration and amasses endless wealth, the sculptor who in days gone by could scarcely feed himself. But somewhere in that opulence, the comfort, and the pride, the starving artist deep within the sculptor finally died. And when he sculpts the faces, he just cannot give the eyes what it was that made them closer to a goddess. Embarrassed though the sculptor was, he had a job to do, and half the world was hanging on the word of something new. And though his former talents could no longer be imbued, the world bought all his faces without question. There is something more than magic in the trappings of a name that bound the aging sculptor to the anchor of his fame. It's often said a star will either burn or it will fade, but the quality that marked his work had festered. When the sculptor was a younger man, each face was like a test, to prove to all, but most himself, that he put forth his best. Well, now his work was legend. It was prized from east to west, so he did not sculpt from hunger like he used to. Well, at last, the elder sculptor felt the time had finally come to sculpt one final face and know the work was finally done. The news relayed by messenger, the whisper spread by tongue, his final masterpiece would be unveiled. So they gathered in the city square before a coming storm, and well before the great reveal the buyers all had swarmed. The sculptor raised a sunken face, its features all deformed, and they lauded him a genius and began the bidding more. I guess once you're a legend, no one wants to say you've failed. But the sculptor signed a glob of clay and called it Holy Grail. That's the sculptor.
Support independent media because we need it more than ever. And I love you all and see you soon.
That's it.
Later.
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say?